Southern style beans. What we need to have for Southern style beans, obviously, is you need beans, flavor, onion, and meat in a crock pot. What we're gonna do is we're gonna show you how to make Southern style beans. You can use pintos, you can use Great Northerns, or you can use navy beans. The recipe is exactly the same, the method is the same, and the time is the same. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off with pre-soaked beans. Now, what you want to do is you want to get your 1 pound bag of beans from the store. You want to do the night before. You want to go ahead and sort the beans. You want to get out all the ugly ones, the discolored ones, the disfigured ones, and then any debris, sticks and stones, whatever else that might be in there. So you're going to start with that sometime the night before. It doesn't really matter. Let it soak at least 8 hours in cold water, and you want to make that water at least 2 inches higher than the beans. These beans have doubled in size overnight. So I'm going to go ahead and dump these out. I'm going to rinse them in the colander and then dump them into the crock pot. After giving them a good rinsing, you just go ahead and throw them right into the crock pot. You're done with that part. That's the easy part. We're going to go ahead and get started on the bouillon. So we're going to use chicken bouillon cubes. We're going to use 5 cups of water. This is a 4-cup measuring cup, so we're going to have to put in a little bit more. I went ahead and already put some water in the heating pot. We're going to use that to make the bouillon with. So that's heating up. We'll get the cubes in there. What's nice about this recipe is that there really isn't a lot of prep work. It really is not that hard to do. And it just tastes amazing, far superior to anything you might get in a can. Another ingredient you want to have is onion. So you could use white onion. I prefer sweet onions. That's just a matter of taste. You go with whatever you like. Now, it's a question of texture for you, whether you want to finely dice them or chunk them or somewhere in between. It just doesn't really matter. That's more of a personal preference. You know, maybe you don't like doing a lot of cutting. Me personally, I guess that doesn't matter to me, but I like to have my onions not finely diced, but I don't like them chunky either. You just throw that right into the beans. Now, the amount of onion you put in there is also up to you. You gotta understand with the flavor profile of anything, it's always just kind of up to you. How much you want to do, how far you want to go with it. Now, as far as how much spices goes, get this camera in a more suitable location. So, you got the onion as your primary spice. You want to put in some black pepper. You can do freshly ground if you're persnickety, but I don't like putting in a whole bunch of black pepper and having to grind it. Now, as far as the onion powder goes, you got to be careful with this stuff, but you definitely want the onion powder even though you just put in an onion. I know it sounds weird, but it has a different flavor profile to it. Garlic, I don't like to skimp on the garlic. You definitely want to have some garlic in there for sure. Garlic really adds some good flavor to it. Again, you do your spices your way, but these are the base spices that I prefer. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. Those are your base spices, and I just prefer the base spices. All right, so with that being said, now you need obviously the ham. So ideally what you'll do is you'll take your ham, leftover ham from a dinner last night, week ago, probably at the most. But you want to get your ham bone. So you get your ham bone here, and you want to carve as much meat off of it as you reasonably can, but still leave some on there. Over time, it will mostly slough off. And you got some good fat inside there. The fat is really nice. You want to leave that in there, and you want to go ahead and just plop that in. Now, I've already pre-chunked some ham. I'm going to throw that in. And still had a couple of ham pieces left, so I'm going to go ahead and carve this up real quick. Now, you don't need all the fat. You gotta keep in mind that meat fat has an awful lot of the unhealthy or the LDL properties to it. So if you're gonna, so you don't want to overdo the fat, but there's still a goodly amount of fat in this ham. But you don't want to carve it all off. You need the fat for the flavor. Well, you need the fat, period. I like to leave my ham chunks large. That's up to you. I also make these beans way more meaty than most people do, but I do that because it's either that or I have to prepare an extra piece of meat on the side, which normally with Southern style beans you're gonna have like pork chops or, something along the lines of pork chops. All right, so I got all that meat thrown in there now. Now we're just waiting for the water. So while we're waiting for the water, I'm going to take this ham bone out for just a brief moment. Water's almost boiling. It helps considerably when you're using the bouillon cubes to get the water to a complete roaring boil. Now, with that being said, you do not have to use the bouillon cubes. You can use liquid bouillon. I'm just cheap, that's why I use the cubes. So I take that boiling water, I get in about a cup of it in there, give those cubes just a moment to kind of soak in that water and get heated up. Now it's important that you understand that you want to use 5 cups of water. Now typically when you get on the internet, you'll see what are some recipes of, for beans, and they always say 6 cups. And that's fine if you want to use 6 cups, but the problem with 6 cups is that it gets soupy, and I don't want my beans to be soupy. I want my beans to be like in their own gravy, and you'll see. So this is going to be part 1, and then part 2 we'll have the finishing of this. All right, so that's our 5 cups of water with the 3 bouillon cubes. We want to give this a good stirring. Now, ideally, you want to cook this between 6 and 8 hours. So I usually hit in at 7 to 8. I don't think that 6 is long enough. If you do not pre-soak, your beans will be crunchy even at the 7 to 8 hour mark. So you want to be cautious about that. All right, so you get it all stirred up. throw in your bone. You want to put it on low, always on low. Okay, you never want to have it on high, because if you do it on high, then it's a much faster cook time and they're just going to turn to mush. It's better to cook it on low for 6 to 8 hours, preferably 7 to 8. Now, once you get that turned on, this is like Ron Popeil. You set it and you forget it. So about 2 hours before it's time to eat, what you want to do is you want to stir it then. You don't want to stir it. You don't want to keep taking the lid off and stirring and taking the lid off and stirring. You know, it's hard to not want to do that because you kind of feel like you're supposed to, but just don't. If you used 6 cups, you can get away with that, but with the 5 cups, you're going to let too much of the water out through steam, and now you're going to have to add water, and it's not going to taste good. So turn it on low, leave it alone. 2 hours from dinner time, you'll take the lid off, you'll give it a good stirring, and you'll put about a half of a stick of butter in there. Stir it up, put the lid back on. And then we will do part 2 at the 1 hour prior to dinner mark. And I'll just give you a heads up what that is. 1 hour prior to dinner, you'll take the lid off and you'll stir it about every 5 minutes. What you're doing then is you're letting the steam out, and at that point, it'll start making its own gravy. All right, so we'll see you guys in part 2.